Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Find a replacement in there from there? What?
Your audio is low. Can you turn your audio
What's
up?
that?
I said your audio is low.
Low? How now?
A little better.
It's because I turned everything all the way up on my deal. And that's as high as I can go. Is it okay?
Yeah, we're good. And it was Dabo 1 returners that we got.
Yeah. Not exactly a family-friendly song. Not exactly a family-friendly song. Okay. It's not exactly a family-friendly song.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day to join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Say, is this young man going to be admissible to the University of South Carolina at the end of the day? Because once you lose that number, it's over. You don't get that number back. So those are decisions you have to make as the head coach, whether or not you're going to support a young man in an academic situation.
I think what's on the table right now is free agency and total chaos, because you're going to have a lot of bad things happen. You're going to have, basically like the NFL right now, the NFL has college scouting. They also have an entire NFL scouting department where they're just studying players from other teams. And so that's what will happen in college, and it's just a mess.
I don't mean to come across as Mr. Stupid, but you do it well. Thank you.
All right, we are back.
Sly Dog. Sly Dog. You know, I don't disagree with Muschamp there, or I'm talking about at the very end, or Sweeney's comments about the possibility of dropping all rules regarding transfers and letting transfers play right away. It will open up just another level of recruiting. Think about it, guys. Every time the NCAA comes up with another recruiting rule or another recruiting idea, it gets abused. take the graduate transfer idea. Came up nobly. It was a noble idea. Let's allow a guy who's graduated but still has eligibility left, and he wants to go to grad school, and his current school doesn't offer the degree in grad school that he wants to go and get. He can transfer with no penalty and play right away for academic reasons only. That's how it started. That's not how it is now. Now it is a free-for-all. Let's find a guy who, has finished up at a smaller, at a less renowned program. Like USC is talking to a safety from Rice who's going to be a grad transfer. And he's talking to other schools, Iowa State and others. But he's looking for football reasons. He's not looking for grad course reasons. And the schools are not going after him because of their graduate courses. They're going after him because, he could come in for a year and give you some depth at safety.
That's because they want to win. They don't get paid for who graduates. They get paid for who
that's
wins.
not entirely true now. There's bonuses in there related to graduation and all that kind of stuff. So anyway,
to stay employed.
I do expect that if that passes, it will be wild, wild west and chaos out there.
Here's why I don't like it. People who are young usually blames the exterior things out there. That's their problem. The last thing they think about is, I need to change some things. So they figure, if I'm not getting playing time or the coach doesn't like me, I'm going to go somewhere else instead of sticking it out. Because we see this at the high school level, especially in basketball. If things don't work out in the first couple of weeks, they're ready to transfer somewhere else. Mm-hmm. When they know deep down, it's inside that has to change, not the exterior. But they're going to bolt the first time they see something going wrong because they think it's the outside things that affect it.
All right, busy night here on Sports Talk. Hope you got over your case of PSDS. Not as bad as a typical post-signing day syndrome that I've had in the past. December 21st was kind of tough. February 8th, not so bad because we did not have the extreme amount of work in terms of the numbers yesterday. We'll talk more about recruiting, start looking ahead to, we've never been looking at the 2019 class, continue to talk about the 2019 class and all that. We're going to hear tonight from a couple of the head coaches of players signed yesterday. Justin Ross's head coach over in Phoenix City, Alabama, is going to join us 7:05. And Rick Sandage's coach from Concord, North Carolina, is going to join us at 7:30. So we'll find out about the final days and hours of their recruitment and find out more about those respective players. Basketball tonight up at Little John. It's the Tigers in Pittsburgh. Another ACC battle. Clemson going for its 20th win of the season. A chance to keep pace for second place in the ACC. Will Pelagic up at his one of his favorite places, Little John Coliseum. Safe and sound and ready to watch some ACC basketball. Good evening, Willie P.
Good evening, Corn, from the 90s night here at Little John Coliseum. Minus the Zubaz and the parachute pants. Although not without a Pittsburgh Panther team that comes in here with a record of 8-16, and I'm going to do your least favorite thing, and that is give you a movie quote, because Pittsburgh comes in at 8-16. I don't know how the hell they won 8. It's a miracle. Yeah. So for that perspective, you wonder exactly how things have gone so wrong for a program that under Jimmy Dixon did so well, under Kevin Stallings not so well. Clemson trying to win its 20th game of the season in just 24 games played, which would be the third fastest to 20 wins in school history and the fastest under Brad Brownell. Clemson doesn't blow anybody out, but they're favored by 19 tonight. I would like to think that this could be a game, not necessarily that Clemson can get some guys some rest, but if you're having to play Marquise Reed, Gabe DeVoe, and Tilton Mitchell, the requisite 35 to 40 minutes that they played all year, this is kind of a game where not only do you get the extended amount of time off on the front end, but you get time off on the back end because of the ACC bye weekend. They don't play again until a week from Wednesday, a week from yesterday, when they take on Florida State on Valentine's Day. So I'm curious to see how much Clemson can kind of stretch things out and maybe turn this into a rout. But obviously, a lot of people wondering just exactly how the layoff will affect them coming up here tonight.
Yeah, I think that it will affect them in a positive way. I think that they'll have their legs underneath them. They needed a break. This team had been going pro almost seemed like every other night. They were playing a game. They were playing on a Saturday, turning around having to play on a Tuesday. They were playing on a Thursday, turning around having to play on a Saturday. They needed a bit of a break. And I imagine in particular for Shelton Mitchell, that knee, which is held up so far, probably needed a little bit of a rest. Everybody else seems to be okay. At this stage of the season, though, much like with a football team, you got your bumps and bruises and your aches and your pains, just in a different variety for basketball.
If I'm Gabe DeVoe, I don't want to rest. I'm at the blackjack table, and I'm winning every hand, and so he wants to stroke that jumper that's been red hot for a long time. But the key point that the Clemson is psychologically, Phil, because every game they played a tough opponent, including a young Wake Forest team. Now, when you walk into the gym and you think there's an 8-16 team, psychologically something happens to you that you think you're going to roll the balls out. And I know Brad Brownell has probably had a tough practice to shake these guys up and say, look, this is the opponent walking in here, and remind them that just over the weekend, a St. John's team that has lost 11 Big East games in a row wins against Duke, and then last night takes down.
Unbelievable.
So anybody
can
sneak up on you on any given night.
Absolutely. Update a couple of other quick notes. South Carolina Football Hall of Fame today announced its latest selections as voted on by media members and others who are involved with the Hall of Fame. And the 5 inductees in the class will be former USC defensive end John Abraham, former Clemson receiver Dwight Clark, Paul McGuire from the Citadel, but probably best known for his days on NBC with, was he with Edinburgh or was he with Cal?
I think he was both. Both they were
Clay Matthews Sr., of course, who is a part of that Matthews family of so many great football players. Listed here as Georgia Tech and a legacy inductee. I think he is from Charleston. I think they have family ties to Charleston. And Richard Seymour out of Lower Richmond and the University of Georgia, one of the biggest recruiting mistakes ever by USC and Clemson. Not saying either one could have gotten him. They sure did let him get away, and he went to Georgia. Had a fantastic career and a tremendous NFL career as well. 800-956-7266, the number if you want to join us. More from here in Little John in a moment.
You said my audio is low? Steve? Are you there? Brian Leonard. Hey. Talk to me.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, your audio was low.
I don't know why that is. Was it as low? Was it like that when I first connected?
No, see, now it's gradually gotten low again.
I mean, it might be my mic trying to overcompensate for the ambient noise.
Probably. Did you want to use the phone line or you want to keep using the mic?
I mean, is it like so low that you can't hear me?
Like, I have you all the way up on the board and we're still kind of struggling.
Let me reconnect. All right, then. All right. I'm only connected via the audio now. Does that help? Are you ready? Sounds like it is. I'm going without the video. How about that?
I can barely hear you, man.
Which artist had the first #1 rap single? I don't know what to do. I can't. I've used this constantly. I don't understand what the deal is.
All right, hold on.
Whereas Will Riggle, he knows all of his Vanilla Ice. Hold on. There we go. How about now? And this one is a 2-part question. What was Vanilla Ice? How about right now? Real name. I can tell you right now, it's still bad. Sorry if you're in the room.
Hey, are you going through your laptop or your phone?
My phone. I don't have the one for my laptop. Where's Jimmy Holcomb? Jimmy Holcomb.
Talk to us, Will.
Check 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. All right, come on down and get it. He knows it was Rob Van Winkle. Thank goodness he changed the name to Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, we're picking up the problem.
And the next question, we'll just keep on rolling to the lightning round. Which band formed first, NSYNC or Backstreet Boys? I still listen to them both every day. Which one do I listen to first? Where is Harrison Brazell? Harrison Brazell. That's right. He knew it was Backstreet Boys. He's a fan just like I am. And the next one. How now? This fad of the 90s was like a purse. Carry on your waist.
And we're back on Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 800-956-7266. Phil Kornblut, the Professor Tom Hayes from Columbia, and Will Pelagic up at Clemson at Little John Coliseum. The Tigers preparing to take on Pitt tonight. That will be an important game for the Tigers at 19-4 and sitting right in second place in the ACC. Tigers battling Duke. Tigers are 8-3. Duke is 7-3. And you know what's tonight, of course, in the state of North Carolina? It's North Carolina and Duke, the first of their two battles of the regular season. And the Blue Devils 7-3 in the league. North Carolina 6-5 in league play. So North Carolina desperate for a win tonight in that one as they play that game in Chapel Hill, tipping off at 8 o'clock. Also tonight, we've got Georgia Tech at Louisville. Let's go back to Will in Clemson at Little John Coliseum, waiting for the Tigers in Pittsburgh. Yeah, this Pittsburgh team, Will, 8-16, 0-11 in the ACC. Second year in a row under Kevin Stallings, where they've just been a huge disappointment. Don't follow them, all that closely. And I'm going to ask you what your take is on them and why this team seems to be struggling so much under Stallings after having that great run under Jamie Dixon.
It really is a struggle bus, Warren, and I really think that Kevin Stallings had to kind of remake a lot of things. He doesn't have as many high-volume scores as they've had in the past. And I think, too, they've played a very, very challenging schedule. I think, that they haven't won a road game all season. They only have one win away from home in a neutral site contest. So they've challenged themselves. They've lost 11 in a row inside the conference. And just from the standpoint of the teams that they've played, I mean, if you look at their wins, I mean, Santa Barbara, Lehigh, High Point, Duquesne, McNeese State, Delaware State, Howson. Those are their wins. So they've really gone on a hard time. And they've, like I said, played a tough schedule. They've played Penn State and Oklahoma State out of conference, and they lost against West Virginia. The thing, though, is that they've been in almost every game they've played here over the last little stretch here. They were able to hold Syracuse to 9 points. They scored 45. They were able to also play that went close current game 60-55. They played NC State close when they came into their building. But, from the standpoint, they don't have as many high volume scorers, and they're playing a lot of woeful defense right now. They just can't seem to get things on track, and they're also giving up 3-point shots at an alarming pace. The opposing team shoots 43% against them from the 3-point line, and that's something that Clemson's going to be able to key on here coming up here in this afternoon game.
Well, I would imagine it's going to be a packed house at Little John. I would think they'd have 9,000 in there for this one. And the Tigers deserve a lot of support with the season that they have going on right now. Coming off a win at Wake Forest the last time out for them, a game in which they shot the ball extremely well from 3. And will you wonder if the Tigers will continue to rely on the 3? I mean, certainly with Gabe DeVoe, the way he's been shooting it of late, 15 3-pointers in his last 3 games, and with a very high percentage, but the other guys in the backcourt as well, knocking down those threes. Brad Brownell, he's not throwing up his hands. He's not throwing in the towel. I mean, he's like, whatever works, works. Whatever is hot for us, let's stay with it. So he's not going to force, as long as they're making those shots, like he's not going to reel those guys in, and he's not going to force them to work the ball to their true only inside threat, and that is, of course, Thomas. As long as those guys are making their shots, he's not going to force them to get the ball inside to him.
Well, that's kind of why I'm wondering how the layoff will affect them, because, when you're in a hot shooting slump, it's like playing good golf. You never want to get off the course. And I think that's kind of where tonight's game is for Clemson, and the fact that, they could have used the break. They needed the break from a lot of standpoints. The fact that they had some bumps and bruises. They had some guys who were struggling with kind of some nagging injuries. They were playing through them, but I think now this will be the real true test of just exactly where this Clemson team is through this stretch drive, because while this sits on its own as a singular test that probably doesn't look very, very big, the remaining schedule is very daunting. At Florida State Wednesday, the following Sunday, home to at Virginia Tech, home Georgia Tech, a team that's played you very, very tough in their building, returning games from Florida State, and then a tough place to play at Syracuse. This is the last gimme on the schedule.
Yeah, well, Will, I was thinking, if you can get a working margin against Pittsburgh, and I know coaches, the first thing you order of business is winning a basketball game, but this is a lab situation because, as you say, down the stretch, they've got some tough cookies they got to play, including Florida State that had that game snaked from them last night by that defense by Virginia. But Phil, I'm of the feeling that if you get a working margin, give Thomas all he can eat to work on his post moves inside. Let him have some success inside to feel good about himself as far as his offense is concerned. So going forward, now you got a 2-pronged weapon. You can shove it inside to him. He's more confident with his inside moves. And then he can also learn tonight, if they get a working margin, to learn how to pass out of the double team, to hit guys for standstill threes that usually are more successful than trying to dribble into a 3.
I think regardless of the margin, you're going to see a lot of work from the second unit. Guys like Malik Williams, who've been getting more time, Scott Spencer, players of that nature. I think they're going to try and not necessarily stay away from Elijah Thomas with the heavy minutes, but I think that while he could use all he can in this stretch, they might try to play a lot more conservative with the minutes, especially if they're high-volume guys, Reed, Mitchell, and DeVoe.
All right, thank you, Will. We'll get back with you a little bit later. Will Pelagic up at Clemson. Tigers preparing to take on Pittsburgh tonight, 7 o'clock tip for that one at Little John Coliseum. Be sure to follow Will on our Twitter feed at SportsTalkSC and on our website after the game, the post-game comments there as well at on our website, SportsTalkSC.com. This game will be televised on the ACC Regional Network tonight. Meantime, as we mentioned, it's Duke and North Carolina tonight. Always love watching those two play one another. And Georgia Tech at Louisville. No games tonight in the SEC. They finished up their action for the work week. Of course, there'll be games on Saturday, but they finished up their work as far as the middle part of the week with games on Tuesday and Wednesday. Last night in Gainesville, Florida beat LSU. Had to come from behind. Florida won that one 73-64. The Gators now 16-8, so they come to Columbia on Saturday with a victory under the belt. How about Georgia? I've got to put Georgia maybe in the category of biggest disappointment. You know, they lose to Vandy last night in Nashville. Not close, 81-66. You talked about A&M and Auburn. That was a great game. A&M now showing its stuff. They're 16-8, 81-80. That game, the last minute of that game took about an hour.
Yes, it did.
I mean, they reviewed everything, you know, out of bounds, clock issues, whatever the case may be. That game took forever. So Auburn loses for the first time at home.
Yes.
This season as well. Last night in the ACC, Virginia came from behind down in Tallahassee, held another opponent under 60.
Now, my eyesight is not as good as it used to be, but I swear every time I see Virginia play, there's 8 men on defense.
59,
I can't
55.
see how they're in those places because they play like an amoeba type defense. It doesn't look like a true zone, but they stay in the areas and they seem to move and know how to move into position. And they seem to psychologically don't try to clamp on you until it's the second half. They don't show everything they do defensively in the first half.
Yeah, Miami beat Wake Forest last night, 87-81. That's 18 wins for the Hurricanes. And Virginia Tech knocked off NC State. That's a tough loss for NC State. Their hopes for the NCAA, 85-75. My new favorite player, Omar Yurtseven, had 20 points last night for NC State. USC women playing tonight at Alabama, trying to break a 2-game losing skid for them. And that'll be coming up a little bit later on in Tuscaloosa. Hey, Mike Morgan coming up in a moment.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
And we continue with Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. From downtown Columbia, Phil Kornblut, the Professor Tom Hayes here. Will Pelagic up at Clemson, preparing for the Tigers and the Panthers. Let's talk more basketball and other good things as we welcome in Mike Morgan for another Pulitzer Prize-winning edition of Morgan on the Move. Brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Their mortgage team is more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process. Whether buying or refinancing, visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage. And by BP Skinner Clothiers. People nationwide get their custom-made suits and accessories from Brent Skinner. Very best in suits, shirts, pants, shoes, and more available to you. Located in Columbia, you can visit the great showroom in the Vista or online, bpskinnerclothiers.com to set up an appointment. Mike joining us now, fresh off a trip to Gainesville, looking pretty good last night on TV. Mike, we were commenting here in the studio about how well you were dressed and, well, just how colorful you looked on television last night. We couldn't figure out if that was a tanning salon thing or maybe a little extra makeup.
Oh, wow. Well, you're kind. I didn't think the tan was looking that good.
Yeah, it's looking real good.
Catch me during baseball season. I'll be George Hamilton compared to what I looked like last night.
Extra crispy.
Exactly. And as always, all clothing credit goes to the fine Brent Skinner over there in Columbia. I feel like there's two phases of my life. It could be divided in two parts. There's before Brent Skinner and after. He's the difference maker.
We much prefer the former, the after part. So
the latter, yes.
Yeah, that's what I meant. The Gators last night, you were there calling that one, and they pulled that one out, so they come to Columbia Saturday with some momentum. What'd you see in them last night that the Gamecocks have to be wary of?
Well, I mean, what I saw was a team that got some confidence back. You know, they had lost 3 conference games in a row. They blew out Baylor in the Big 12 SEC Challenge, but 3 SEC losses in a row, including a couple at home, that's concerning. I think opposing teams have certainly figured out how to scout and how to play Florida. And when they're bombing threes, because they can spread you out and they have so many guys that can hit them, when they're on, they're still very, very difficult to beat. But when they're not, they do not have a post game to speak of right now. The loss of John Igbunu, who is still not back, and I'm starting to believe he's not coming back based on things that I was able to accumulate while down there. They're like a donut. There's just a big hole in the middle. Chris Silva is a guy that could definitely be a major matchup problem in that ball game. But overall, it's a Florida team that was lacking confidence. You can hear dogs barking in the background. Is a team that was really lacking confidence that I think built some back up after that game.
Yeah, I thought the dog was dead.
It's a new dog.
Oh,
it's a new dog and it's another dog. So it's actually 2 dogs. But yes, Kramer has passed on.
Yes,
as you so delicately put it, a couple of years ago.
Well,
sorry to hear that.
Ironically, South Carolina has gone in the dumps right after that 3-point barrage in Gainesville. But for whatever reason, Frank Martin and Michael White, I think he's won 3 out of the 4 games against Florida, if you count the Elite 8 game, Mike. Do you see anything that South Carolina does defensively or offensively that really sticks in the craw of the Florida Gators?
Well, it was funny. You know, we interviewed Mike White after the win last night, and one of the first things we asked him about was, you know, the next game at South Carolina. And he goes, "Oh yeah, that'll be an easy one," very sarcastically. Teams don't like playing South Carolina. And the reason is that, you know, Frank Martin employs a defensive effort for 40 minutes that is almost unmatched in this conference. So when you go and you play the Gamecocks, you know that offensively they're going to try and take you out of things you do well, and they normally are successful doing that. I think now, though, it'll be a very interesting game for me to see if South Carolina can get some confidence going of their own. I said, and I thought they were really playing over their heads for most of the season, going through January, picking up wins against Kentucky, picking up wins at Florida and at Georgia. I thought that was a heck of an accomplishment based on what they have. But at some point during the course of an 18-game conference schedule, very often talent does prevail. And I think right now you're seeing that. It's just a team that does not have a lot of firepower. Offensively, they just don't do many things well, and they don't have a point guard. That's very difficult to win with, particularly this year in the SEC, which is, again, as we've talked about so many times, it's the most loaded it's been in over a decade. So there, in years past, when it was such a weak league, you could play that way, and you play other teams that have a lot of weaknesses too. That's not the case this year.
Talking with Mike Morgan on the move here on Sports Talk. One more thing on the Gamecocks. They got Corey Holden back the other day at Arkansas, and they got some good minutes out of him. So if he's healthy enough to go and play his regular game and take over that point guard spot, what will that mean to the Gamecocks here down the stretch, you think?
You know, it's hard for me to say because I haven't seen a whole lot of him healthy. Obviously it's a relief to Frank in that you have a guy that at least has played the position. I know that he was really counting on Corey Holden to be a big part of this offense, particularly, you know, when the news came about Dozier not coming back. But I don't know if he's a panacea for all that plagues this team. They're still not a good shooting team. So I mean, even if somehow Holden gave you stability at the point guard spot, I don't think we should overinflate who he is. That's best case scenario. He's a guy that's going to, for this year, for this many games left, and as rusty as he may be, all you're hoping for is stability. You're not hoping for a guy that's going to put 20 points a night on the board. So you still have to get points from somebody other than Chris Silva. And Silva's been fantastic. And we all know that. But Booker at times looks like a great shooter, and at times he disappears in games. I'm not sure where Hassani Gravett fits yet. I mean, I keep hearing what a great athlete he is and what a great prospect he is. I haven't seen it yet on the floor. Not yet. And then you look at, I like Minaya. I think Minaya is going to be a really good player in this league. But you have other guys, to me, that you just can't rely on to score points. So for South Carolina to score more than 65 points in a game, sometimes that's a struggle, particularly when you're playing against teams that know how to defend.
I want to turn the attention to Clemson. They host Pittsburgh tonight. I know you are a big Kevin Stallings fan when he was at Vanderbilt. What in the world is happening with him at Pittsburgh? Why is it so bad? Can he turn it around and save his job there?
I don't know if I was a big Kevin Stallings fan. I mean, I think he did some good things at Vanderbilt. He had them going to the tournament on a fairly consistent basis and had a couple of years where they won games. And then you could just see it kind of going south a little bit. I think he just kind of wore out his welcome in Nashville. I don't see a whole lot of Vanderbilt fans that are sad to see him go. And I can't find you a Pitt fan, and believe it or not, I know a few. Nobody at Pitt was ever excited about that hire. It seemed like a backroom deal that was done. I think there's an agent connection. There's something there. It made no sense for Pitt to get rid of Jamie Dixon and hire Kevin Stallings. And so I thought that hire was doomed from the very get-go, and I still think it is.
Mike, my eyesight isn't what it used to be. So explain to me, every time I see Virginia play defense, there's 8 men on the court. I can't see how they have such great coverage, especially in the half court on defense. What do you see that they do that other teams can't or won't do?
It's Tony Bennett. It's the pack line defense, which goes back to his old man, who was a great coach at several spots. He learned it from Pops, and they are willing to play ugly to win. They are willing to continually win games in the high 50s, 60s. They know they're not going to score a ton of points. You know, if this were a game of football, their strategy would be we're gonna win the turnover battle, we're gonna win the time of possession battle, and we're not going to beat ourselves. That's the way they play the game of basketball. And the pack line defense, it's nothing that fancy. And I've had him explain it to me. I've done a couple of Virginia games. I mean, basically, it is a concept that says we're not going to give you open threes.
All right, hold that thought. Hold that thought. We'll come back. Let you finish up after the break.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Okay, we're back. Mike Morgan with us. Morgan on the move in our second hour. You want to stay with us at 7:05. We will have the coach of Justin Ross with us to talk about him. At 7:30, the coach of Rick Sandich with us to talk about him. Should you lose us tonight for whatever reason, I know things are going on, you can stay with us on our website and go to our YouTube page. Click on our website, the link to our YouTube page, and watch us and listen to us there, or use your smartphone, use the TuneIn app, and go to one of our affiliates that continues to stream us during the evening. Our Columbia affiliate, the Point Radio, never preempts us, so we're always there when you need us that way. All right, back to Mike. So you were giving us your final thoughts on Virginia and their great defense.
Yeah, I mean, just in a nutshell, basically they force you into bad shots. I mean, what's the worst shot in basketball right now? It's the shot just inside the 3-point line. So it's a 19-footer. You're going to get that off them, but you're not going to get an open three. They collapse the moment you drive the paint. It's really not that novel of a concept, but it's coached so well, and the players buy in, and because of that, they're a nightmare to score on. And everybody, even in a league like the ACC, has struggled to score against Virginia this year.
Yeah. Are they a deeply talented team, or is he making this happen because of a great defensive concept? The guys have bought into playing that kind of defense, and then they generate their offense off of that.
Well, look, opposing coaches will tell you, don't let Coach Bennett fool you. They have some athletes there. They recently had Malcolm Brogdon, who is now in the NBA, and they've had some. Parentis was not an NBA player, but he's a very good college point guard. But for the most part, no, they don't stack up with Duke or North Carolina or Syracuse, or in terms of just pure athletes, 1 through 8, 1 through 9. No, they have kids who are solid athletes who play the game the right way and play the game within his system to a T. And because of that, they're always going to be good. This year, they have a chance to be great. But I doubt you'll ever see Virginia just have one of these god-awful years where they slip to the very bottom of the pack of the ACC. They're too well coached to do that.
All right, one last thing. Going back to Clemson and Pitt tonight at Little John, the Tigers have been red hot from the outside. What is your take on Gabe DeVoe and his emergence this year as, at least at this point, one of the premier outside shooters in the ACC, if not in all of college basketball?
Well, you would know his recruiting better than I would, and you would know most of those guys recruiting better than I know enough to know they're not chock full of ESPN 100 kids, and what they've been able to do is shoot lights out. I mean, I was watching that game against North Carolina in disbelief on the fact that you kept waiting for them to cool off, and they never did. They just kept hitting one after the other. And much like we were just talking about Florida, it's not one or two guys. It's multiple guys that can do it. And when you have that situation, even if you know a team's going to come in and shoot threes, very hard to defend when they can spread the floor and have a number of different guys do it. So I tell you, I think Coach Brownell, I mean, I don't know who the leading candidates are. Probably Bennett would win it if Virginia continues to dominate the league for ACC Coach of the Year. But Coach Brad Brownell certainly has to be in the conversation.
All right, one last thing. I know you're an SEC guy, but you're a worldly guy watching all of basketball. One of my favorite games of the year, the first of two, Duke and North Carolina tonight in Chapel Hill. Tar Heels struggling here a bit. Duke had the loss to St. John's, but they're still Duke. So what do you think? Playing in Chapel Hill tonight, Duke and the Tar Heels. It's always just a great game to watch because of the atmosphere. It's not a better atmosphere, I don't guess, for any college basketball games in the country. I mean, I think about some of the other blue blood spots, and they have great rivalries and great games. I can't think of any better than this one.
No, I don't think anything trumps it. I mean, Kentucky doesn't have an equal in the SEC. I think the stat I've heard that the last 100 times they played, it's right around 50-50, and the point differential is in like single digits, something ridiculous. And the fact that the geography of the two, the fact that they're in the same league, all the historic names and games that are attached to it. Yeah, I think it's one of those few college basketball games that if you have no interest in who wins and no interest in either school, there's a good chance you'll still watch if you just enjoy basketball.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people that happens to do that and will be watching. So to answer your question, I think Duke prevails. I think Duke's a better team. I think North Carolina, much like the previous two national championship teams, this season following a national championship team for Roy, lost a lot. And they don't just rebuild and have a bunch of one and done guys. That's not their formula. That's becoming Coach K's formula.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his talent overall will pull off a win in Chapel Hill.
All right. Yeah, I thought you were a big Kevin Stallings fans because I remember the last time I was in your condo and the dog was still alive. Thought I saw a big fat head of Kevin Stallings on your bedroom wall. Was that not him?
Yeah, well, that's just because I think he was a man of great style and fashion. It had nothing to do with his coaching. But yes, I still have the fat head. But I don't have the dog anymore. May rest in peace.
Poor Kramer.
But I still have the Kevin Stallings fat head, yes.
And I know you enjoyed Nationals. I don't know what you enjoy more, National Signing Day for football or the baseball draft day. What do you enjoy the most there?
National Signing Day for me is it's a one-day deal. I'll take a look at it. You know, our networks had great coverage of it, as they do. So I care about it one day a year, and then I move on. I will tell you this. I believe Georgia is going to be able to recruit now the way Alabama has been recruiting. I don't think this is a fluke or a blip on the radar. I think the way they have it rolling and the way Kirby can do things, don't be surprised if this is not the last #1 rated recruiting class for Georgia.
Just keep that helicopter gassed up.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they weren't that bad recruiting under Mark Richt, were they? I tend to remember some pretty stacked classes under that cat.
Yeah, no, it's not. Look, Georgia, I'm convinced you could hire a lot of different people, and they're still going to have top 20 recruiting classes. But as you know, I mean, there's a difference.
Yeah.
I think I saw a stat, and I know we're always on the clock here, so give me a warning if we're actually going to commercial break.
Yeah.
I think I saw a stat where something like 11 of the last 22 national champions, and maybe even more than that, had a minimum of 2 top 10 recruiting classes going into that national title, something like that. In other words, you can ignore rankings and make fun of them and act like they don't mean anything all you want. The fact of the matter is the teams that are playing for national championships every year typically are having very highly rated recruiting classes. So I don't think you can just ignore it like you might have 20 years ago when it was much more of an inexact science.
Inexact science.
You're not going to like that opinion, are you?
That's my phrase. I made up that phrase 25 years ago about recruiting. No, I'm not. I understand. I asked somebody today, because we attach ratings to these players and it sticks to them for the rest of their lives. I've seen obituaries about football players, and the first thing in their line is he was a 3-star quarterback. No, I'm serious. I've seen that before, which is kind of sad.
Oh, gee.
But I mean, let's just think about take for example Bo Jackson. Okay, was Bo Jackson a great football player when he played at Auburn?
Yes,
we would all agree, right? He had no star rating, but we could all see he was a great football player, and he had all the offers in the world. My point is, the star rating doesn't make the player. The player makes the player, and the offers identify who great players are in the eyes of the experts. I'm just wary of some of the people who sit there and judge the talent and assign these star ratings, because I don't know if they know what they're talking about, and I don't know about the influences involved. And that's all of that. We're out of time. Thank you, Mikey. He doesn't believe anything I just said. I could tell. And I'm glad the dog's dead. Top of the hour break.
Man.
I'm just kidding. I knew Kramer. Kramer was a good dog. Top of the hour break.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show. 800-956-7266.
Welcome back into Sports Talk, everybody. South Carolina Radio Network from downtown Columbia. Phil Kornbluth here, along with the Professor Tom Hayes. Clemson and Pittsburgh just tipping off at Little John. Louisville out to an early 8-2 lead on Georgia Tech at Louisville. You know, we're still recovering from National Signing Day yesterday, even though it wasn't, volume-wise, not that big. But people-wise, there were some big things happening yesterday with some big-time players, including wide receiver Justin Ross from Central High in Phoenix City, Alabama. His coach is Jamie Dubose, and Coach joins us now here on Sports Talk. Good evening, Coach. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Man, we're doing great. Thank you so much for joining us. So my first question is, how was it today around your school and around Justin after he did practically the unthinkable and said no to Alabama and Auburn and chose Clemson?
Well, it was a calm day. That was the first calm day we've had in a while. National Signing Day and the day before was real busy. My phone has been. I think my phone's in recovery right now. Justin shut his phone down on a lot of phone calls a few days ago, and I think my phone took over. So I've got to rest of that a little bit, but it's been a good day. I ran into Justin twice today, and he had a big smile on his face, and you could tell he was happy and relieved, and glad it was over and ready to move on.
Are the diehards treating him okay?
Well, it's been kind of tough. There's only two guys since I think 2005 or further, maybe even 2003, that's left the state. The number one guys, Marcus Russell, I think, went to LSU, and then Jameis Winston. That's the only two guys, and now Justin Ross. So, it doesn't happen very often, and it's been tough on him. But we educated him, and Justin is very smart. We prepare our guys for it. And I told him to stay off social media. That was the best thing for him right now. Stay away from anything else. So. It'll be fine. Most sports things, anything that happens, people just react in shock, and they get over it in 2 or 3 days, and like to move on. And everybody's proud of him here in Phoenix City, and all our coaches, and I'm extremely proud of him just doing what he wants to do. If he had one regret, probably I'm speaking for him a little bit, but I think if he looked back on it, one thing he would do is probably when he had done it on the 20th and got it over with. But it made it tough in this state, and a lot of people made it tough, and the coaching staffs here, Auburn and Alabama are great programs, and, to say no to them and be an in-state guy and a number one guy is tough, and they made it tough on him. But, the two recruiters that had him out of Clemson being Todd Bates and Jeff Scott were remarkable, and, I built some relationships with those two guys. I already knew Todd Bates, but I've been 24, 25 years now in Alabama, and those two guys recruited better and harder than anybody I've seen in my years of doing it.
Can you kind of take us inside the school, inside the home there with him, the couple of days leading up to signing day as he was trying to make the decision? And was he going back and forth, or was it clear-cut Clemson in his mind, and he just had to convince himself that that was the right decision for him?
Well, there's a lot of rumors out there about everything that Justin, knew for a long time and everything else. I met with Justin every day the last week, and the one thing I'll tell you about Justin when you find out about him, he's a very honest guy. He's a guy that doesn't say a whole lot, and he's a guy that you can trust and you can go to the bank on. He is a remarkable person with tremendous character. And, Justin sat with me, and Justin and me have been very close. We've been together for 4 years. And, as we had our conversations, I've never told an athlete where to go, what to do, anything else. I just try to be a soundboard and try to help him out and try to, give him direction where he might need some, and, just listen. And, maybe give him some questions that he needs to go answer and things like that. But, Justin, all the way up to the night before, when he left school at 1 o'clock the day before signing day, I asked him, do you have a number one? And the answer to me was no. And he did get it down to 2. The night before, I believe, or the morning before, him and his mom had went and spent a lot of time together. And, I think that morning he got it down close. And, I think he went basically all the way up till about 2 hours before he, really felt comfortable with what he was going to do. The whole time Clemson was there. Alabama made a great push on their visit. When he went, I think it was Clemson-Auburn about a year ago, and it went back and forth. Clemson always being in the lead, and then, he went on as official to Tuscaloosa a few weeks back, and that's when the pressure got put on him a little bit, and it made it tough on him, and he started thinking a lot, and kept going through things, and I think he got close to even or something, and then Auburn jumped back in on their visit. But at the end of the day, Clemson never left, and Todd Bates and Jeff Scott just did a remarkable job of selling the university. I went with him on his first visit to Clemson. I'd never been either, and they told me I didn't want to leave. I sat there and thought, man, this is unbelievable. It's a great facility, and just the environment they had, and the way people treated him, and the way people said things, and the support groups around. And I've been to universities all over the country, but I was really blown away myself. And I knew they did a number on him, and they had him in the draft. And he just Justin's one guy that wanted to make the right choice. He's a guy that can be in the NFL in 3 to 4 years, whatever he decides there. And he's got unbelievable talent, and he wanted to make the right decision for him. He wanted to make the right decision for his mom, which is very important, and his grandmother in his life. And I thought he did everything right, and he knows he's going to the right place. He wanted to make the right decision, and he did, and he feels really good about it, and I feel great about it. So, we're excited for him, and we're ready for him to get there.
Well, one of his classmates will be Trevor Lawrence. Does that have anything to do with it? He's going to have a stout quarterback to play with?
Well, I'm sure that had a major part in it. I know that him and Trevor developed a relationship out of the opening in Oregon, and they were actually on the same team, I think, and spent a lot of time together. And I thought it was interesting. Both of them had Clemson colors out of Oregon, and they spent a lot of time there. But he did develop some relationships with guys there, and I think he felt really, really comfortable. But yeah, the quarterback situation, that always helps.
Talking with Coach Jamie DuBose, coach of Justin Ross. Got about a minute and a half left, Coach. Sum up for us the kind of receiver he is, what you like about him.
Well, he's a guy that runs unbelievable routes. He's been a lot of coaches say that when they've watched him and they've watched film of him, that they're impressed that he can run routes so smooth, be an inside guy or outside guy. He's 6'4", 205, pushing 210 right now. He has remarkable speed. Don't buy into a combine number that you see somewhere, because Justin's only went to 2 combines in his entire life. I sum him up best by telling you this. A lot of people ask me this question, and I've been in it a long time. I've had great football players, and I've had great combine football players. Justin Ross is a great football player. He doesn't go to combines. He doesn't worry about 40 speed. He has got unbelievable speed that can run away and get separation. He's played basketball his entire life and understands how to use his body. He has hands, which you go look at it. He was on the You Got Moss on the NFL, made a one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. He did that 3 times this year. He has made catches in practice that I just stopped and had to talk about it for a little while almost, or catch myself. This guy's got unbelievable wingspan. He's got great power, and the biggest note that I always add about him, he tried to quit football on us in the 10th grade and give it up to play basketball, and I wouldn't let him quit. I forced him to continue to play, and now look where he is, and I think his upside is yet to come.
We can't thank you enough, and we appreciate the insight. Go and relax this weekend. Look forward to talking to you again soon. I know you'll have another one, and we thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate everything.
Thank you, Coach Jamie DuBose from Central High, Phoenix City, Alabama. They've had some good ones over the years, but this one in particular, Justin Ross, extra special. Back in a moment.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
All right, Clemson kind of having its way with Pitt. They haven't put them away. 16-10, 11:28 to go in the first half. Tigers shooting 55% from the floor. Only 1 of 3 from 3. They are getting the ball inside to Thomas. He's got 4 shots, 6 points, 3 rebounds to lead the Tigers at this point. And they are beating Pitt on boards 9-4. And that's to their benefit and scoring inside, leading 10-2 points in the paint. How about some recruiting, huh? Yeah, let's do some recruiting. catch you up on a couple of things here. Last night we were so tied up with South Carolina Clemson. One thing I like to do is recognize in-state players who sign with our in-state schools. Besides South Carolina and Clemson,
Newberry's got about 40.
we welcome 51. That's no joke. And we document well South Carolina and Clemson. Of course, I want to mention the other schools in the state and the in-state guys that they sign, because these are guys that we see in the Touchstone Energy North-South game with the Shrine Bowl. We follow them in high school. And so here is the list by school of the players that they signed in-state. Coastal Carolina actually signed more in-state players than they normally do. Defensive back Jordan Morris of Rock Hill, linebacker Noah Freshley of Conway, athlete Tyreek Goodman of Newberry, offensive lineman Trevor Good of Aner, wide receiver Connor McCarthy of Wando, offensive lineman Jacob Porter of Loris, and running back Javante Robinson of Trinity Burns. Signing with Presbyterian, Latta, home of champions, offensive lineman Blake Tyler, Indian Land offensive lineman Jake Locklear, Greer defensive lineman Jalen Terrell, Gilbert defensive back Jackson Digieso, Digieso, Brew running back Jarius Jeter, South Aiken place kicker Marin Sanders, West Side defensive back Noah Suber, Lexington receiver Mitchell McGee. South Carolina State, of course, signed a bunch of in-state players. They really got some standouts. Chapin receiver Xavier Gordon, South Point linebacker B.J. Davis, Brooklyn Casey offensive lineman Jarrell Moore, Blythewood defensive back Jadon Brunson, and offensive lineman Brandon Tucker. Ben Lippin, offensive lineman Justin Gett. Latta, home of champions, defensive back Kendall Moultrie. Fort Dorchester, offensive lineman Avery Snipes. Lower Richland defensive end Antonio Anderson. Somerville receiver Shaq Davis, and Baptist Hill athlete Corey Fields. Both will play basketball as well. Hillcrest defensive back Dante Anthony. Lamar linebacker Jablonski Green. Keep an eye on this guy at South Carolina State. He could be the next standout linebacker in time at South Carolina State. He is a good-looking kid. Greer offensive lineman Bradley Thompson. Crestwood defensive end Chris Simon. Orangeburg Wilkinson receiver Zach Felder. South Point athlete Scott Robinson. Spring Valley quarterback Quincy Hill. Liberty place kicker Austin Kemp. Wilson Elko defensive back DeMarcus Go. In-staters signing with Wofford. Linebacker Zy Abercrombie of Emerald. Linebacker Tanner Barnes of Hillcrest. Offensive lineman Quayshawn Greenlee of T.L. Hanna. Running back Nathan Walker of Cross. Athlete Dre Yarbo of Greenwood. North Greenville signed a good group of in-state players. Linebacker Connor Shugart of Spartanburg, who had a walk-on offer from USC. Offensive lineman Matt Johnson of Ben Lippin. Defensive lineman Emmanuel Tatum of Carver's Bay. Running back E.J. Humphrey of Powdersville. Linebacker Micah Bryant of Hemingway. Defensive lineman Demacia Armstrong of Burns. Defensive end Kwame Livingston of North Myrtle. Running back Samaj Lakin of Clover. Offensive lineman Dalton McKittrick, Andrew Jackson. Linebacker Cameron Elijah Payne, Lugol, Belgium. Defensive back Kendall Brooks, Swansea. Receiver Lucas Catalfmo, a transfer from Presbyterian. Receiver Matthew Martin, a transfer from Charleston Southern. Now to Newberry. 51 signees from the state, I believe. All from the state.
No, I was just kidding.
No, you're serious. I'm serious. Let me go quick. Erickson Abney, offensive lineman Gilbert. Amir Abrams, running back Newberry. Jacob Aldridge, tight end Central. Melvin Elwine, defensive end Ridge Spring Monetta. Matt Gard, linebacker Williamsburg Academy. Colton Bailey, quarterback Chapman. That's two Mr. Footballs there, and Abrams and Bailey, two finalists. Alec Blackman, center, Newberry. Blake Branham, linebacker, Dutch Fork. DeQuayne Brunson, defensive back, Saluda. Amir Cromer, offensive lineman, Newberry. Michael Dotson, linebacker, home of champions, Latta. Atlanta had a big signing day. Dawson Dove, offensive lineman from Dillon. Pete Elmore, quarterback, Barnwell. Sojourn Gartrell, defensive lineman from South Aiken and Butler Junior College in Kansas. Charlton Goodwin, linebacker, Abbeville. Micaiah Grant, corner from Heathwood Hall. Cale Green, defensive end, Fox Creek. Mason Hawkins, linebacker, Mid-Carolina. Ryan Harriet, defensive back, Fort Mill. Tyquan Horn, receiver, Mullins. Billy Jackson, offensive lineman, Robert E. Lee. Cody J., defensive lineman, Emerald. Trishad Jett, linebacker, Ridgeview. Damon Johnson, defensive back, Saluda. Deshaun Kitchings, wide receiver, South Aiken. I think he's related to Des Kitchings because Des came from South Aiken, I think.
He did.
Tyson Lawson, defensive back, West Florence. Jalen Lawton, linebacker, Colleton County. Olin McCurry, receiver, Somerville. Zach McGee, linebacker, North Augusta. Chance Miller, defensive lineman, Northwestern. Malik Morant, defensive lineman, Conway. Marcus Morgan, free safety, Greenwood. Trey Owens, offensive lineman, West Florence. Sam Padgett, linebacker, Saluda. Ashton Parkman, defensive lineman, Saluda. Carter Parrott, wide receiver, Kings Academy. Connor Powers, offensive lineman, Powdersville. Lawson Reel, kicker, Strom Thurmond. Colin Richardson, offensive lineman, Airport. Justin Rivers, long snapper, Airport. Cade Ruff, wide receiver, Mid-Carolina. Amond Smalls, linebacker, Battery Creek. Alex Smith, defensive back, Dutch Fork. Coleman Smith, receiver, Seneca. Jalen Sturgis, cornerback, North Augusta. Dacian Tate, offensive lineman, Gaffney. A.J. Valentine, linebacker, Strom Thurmond. Cody Vaughn, offensive lineman, Clinton. Savion Watson, quarterback, Chesterfield. Jules Williams, defensive lineman, North Augusta. Limestone, cornerback, Reggie Jones, Buford. Offensive lineman, Cameron Thomason of Greenville. Linebacker, Cam Blanding of Crestwood. Linebacker, Chandler Corley of Lexington. Tight end, Jacob Putman, Christchurch. Linebacker, Dalian Guess of Irmo. Cornerback, Eric Littles of Irmo. Offensive lineman, Shimon Young of Burns. Safety, L.J. Gray, White Knoll. Linebacker, Elijah Muhammad of Easley. Linebacker, Richard Jenkins of Bluffton. Kicker, Nathan Baker of Easley. Defensive lineman, Cornell Thompson of York. Defensive lineman, Wakeel Rivers, Fort Dorchester. Linebacker, Colin Birch of Sharam. Defensive lineman, Jimmy Bracey III of Somerville. Linebacker, Thomas Tillotson of Malden. Cornerback, Najee Hill of Ashley Ridge. Safety, Noah Means of Burns. And wide receiver, Quadric Smith of Union. Conway quarterback, Darren Granger, signed with Furman, as did Clemson defensive back transfer Amir Trapp. Defensive back, Von Ramsey of Greenwood, signed with the Citadel. Defensive back, Demaje Foster of Spartanburg. And defensive end, Romero Rock of Sumter and Georgia Military. They signed with Charleston Southern. Benedict did not announce any signings Wednesday. Running back DJ Twitty of Chapman, he signed with East Tennessee State. He had a walk-on offer from USC. A couple of other notes in football today. Per 247 Sports, defensive end Savion Jackson of Clayton, North Carolina, has set an official visit to USC for June 2nd. Woo-hoo! I love that. Florida State offered USC and Clemson target quarterback Sam Howell of Monroe, North Carolina. And Frank Martin is going to head out to Vegas next week to check out 6'4" point guard TJ Moss of Memphis to get another look at him and see if they can bring him into Columbia. We'll be right back. Hey, one more recruiting note. Failed to mention that today Clemson offered a highly coveted safety by the name of Lewis Klein out of Everett, Massachusetts. He's got a ton of offers at this point. Clemson up on Pittsburgh 24-15, 5:36 to go in the first half. Tigers shooting 45%. Scara leading the way with 7 points, and Thomas has got 6. How about the USC women? You watching that?
Yes, USC women leading